Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. And he is Todd Peranto, the producer of this show, is my co-host today. And our guest is Nashville singing legend, Wayne Warner. Welcome to the show, Wayne.
Well, thank you. And I thought you were the co-guest, but I'll share you.
I'm not sure if I'm a co-host. I'm both. I'll be your co-host and your co-guest.
Well, all right.
Or I'll be a moderator.
Yeah, I was going to say you can be a mediator.
If you two can't get along, I'll...
But I think we're having you on the show, too, because, Wayne has become quite the legend in Nashville and back here in the kingdom, and you have actually spent some time in Nashville yourself, so...
with him.
Right.
With him.
Yeah.
And
and
Wayne,
we're related, too, but I don't know. Are we letting that out of the bag?
Well, apparently so. I don't usually tell anybody, but there you have it.
So, because up here in the kingdom... I think if the first thing you can do that's really kind to your kids, once they get to date and age, give them a genealogical chart, and so they can compare each other's genealogy compare their genealogy with their prospective dates to make sure you're not too closely related.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of connections here.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
you just published a book about your your time and your journey from Vermont to Nashville.
It is still so strange for me to be introduced or have the author as you have for so long as an author.
Right.
It's still an oddity for me.
Right.
But what a journey, as Todd knows so well. That and also from your line of work, but the music industry or what Todd and I do, it is a journey, really. It takes us on a road that we sometimes don't expect. I've watched Todd do some amazing things that I'm sure he never dreamed of through the career of his music.
Right.
But I never thought that it would. Take me to this, to writing a book, and it was something that I just never thought I would do. In fact, I didn't want to do it. I fought it all the way, but it's been a fun process. It really has.
And it really was. I've read part of your book, and you really, even though you grew up in a very musically talented family, it doesn't appear.
That's Mom calling to say hello to all of you, and to say hello to all the people watching also. So hello from Mom to everybody out there.
So
he timed that well.
But it doesn't sound like you necessarily had a fun experience, especially going into to high school, because it seems like you had different plans than maybe the teachers did.
Well, at that time, if you were a 16-year-old boy who listened to country music in this area, you didn't tell anybody. It wasn't, I guess, it's like the song, I was country before when country wasn't cool.
Right.
And so Todd may not remember those days.
Not really, no.
But yeah, and I was the lead singer of a country band, and so I was very misunderstood in the hallways of learning, and off the stage, and I certainly felt out of place. And so bullying wasn't a term that was used then, but it certainly was what I was the target of. No question about that.
See, because I remember your family's band so well. I would have thought you would have been like this rock star in the hallways because they were so popular. But I guess, teenagers, no matter what generation, teenage years can be brutal.
If I had the knowledge that I know now and would have tapped into that,
Right.
I would have changed that up a little bit and tapped into that and probably could have played that role. But, and I think Todd, being around so many artists,
Right.
Understands that a lot of us, and I certainly fit under that. I've always been very shy, and so I could never have played that star celebrity role well. And I still am very shy. It's it's something that people in our business, like Todd and I, we learn how to put on a mask and to turn it on. But it's always been a challenge for me. I always like to if there's a corner for me to be in, that's where I'm at.
Well, we have more in common than you think, because when I was in school and even in college, if I looked at the syllabus and realized, oh no, public speaking,
Yeah, right.
I would take off the day, or if I had to do it, it was almost like you wanted to puke on your feet. But then I published my first book, and the publisher said, all right, we're going on a radio tour. I'm going to what? But I had to do it.
Yeah.
And then this joker came along and recruited me for the radio station, and I've had a radio show up there. Then I had this, and it's like once, I've had to do what I've had to do, just like you.
Exactly.
But that still is not me. Now, granted,
Sure.
we have here, Todd's heard this story. He kind of grew up a little differently than we did. He grew up, he had like security detail and everything. His father was the mayor of Newport
Right.
when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And so,
Love Charlie.
he had a security detail.
Oh yeah, Secret Service.
Yeah. And the funny story Todd tells about growing up, everybody thought he was rich because his father and mother always brought him to school in a different car every day.
Yeah.
Now you fill in the details of that.
Yeah. So a friend on the playground, he told me years later, he said, we thought you were rich. We knew you were the mayor's kid. You got dropped off at school in a different car almost every day. And he goes, it wasn't until I got into my 30s and I started working at a car dealership that I realized that your dad sold cars for Hayes
right.
Ford, and none of those cars
That's
were
right.
yours. But yeah, we'd have a different vehicle, and then if we were going to go camping, we'd suddenly have a family van. And
Now, Todd, let's mention your work a little bit. How much influence has Wayne had on you?
a lot. Wayne, God, this is a long time ago now, isn't it? But he took me down to Nashville and put me in a real studio. Before that, I was, you don't know what a 4-track is, do you? It was about a little bit bigger than the book, and you put a cassette tape in it, and you could record 4 separate things, and that's what I was doing. And
You did some good stuff.
you have to be, I still think now that Pro Tools anybody can have on their laptops and
Right.
stuff, I think it forces you to be creative when you're working with your limitations.
Absolutely.
But Wayne, I'd been to Nashville once before with a girlfriend of mine. We just went to the Grand Ole Opry and took the tour around the city. But Wayne got me into a studio with some musicians that were, the real deal.
Right.
And I was nervous and intimidated, but pretended not to be.
Fun time.
It was very fun, yeah.
And he nailed it.
So what is Nashville like? I know what Nashville is like as a tourist, and when I go, I take part in the tourist scene, all the bars, and of course I've never done it, but I've been tempted to get on one of those beer powered foot-powered trolleys.
The bicycle things?
Yeah, they have around town. But what is it like for a performer? Is it different? This is to both of you.
I've never done it. Every time I always say this. I love Nashville, and I've got some dear friends down there, and I always say I love the creativity,
Right.
and I love the energy, and I love the kinship, and I go down there, and I stock up my cupboards with that, and then I come home and pig out. Yeah. Never been a city boy. So I love to go down to Nashville. I'm heading down in a couple of weeks. It's where I make my records. It's where certainly I'm artistically based.
Right.
But I don't like to hang around the place. I like to go down there and get done what I got to do. Go to dinner with some few friends, go listen to some friends I know, and get back home.
I was telling you Annie Mosier of
Yeah.
Irisburg.
Right.
She's been down singing and songwriting down here for I think upwards of 25 years. She's a Lake Region grad, and she plays at the Bluebird and
Right.
everything. And she was telling me that because she loves that whole region, and that's really she just that's her home.
Sure.
And but she was saying that it's interesting. There's back home, whether it be Vermont, Maine, California, in your community, you might be this standout singer that everybody knows.
Right.
But she said when you go down to Nashville, it's filled with outstanding singers.
That's right.
Thus, you are only average, or maybe not even average.
That's
because
exactly right.
Did you find that?
Well, I never really, I never chased that bone. One of the things that really, I think changed my life, Scott, not only artistically, but in almost every part of my being, is that I grew up, and I say this so often, I grew up with the Missisquoi River behind my house.
Yeah.
And so quite often I'd find myself down on those banks. And I noticed at quite a young age that the only fish that were going with the flow were dead. So I learned at a young age to not try to do my own thing.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that I knew early on was that I was not a great singer. So I had to develop.
I might disagree with that.
Well, I appreciate it. So I had to develop a sound.
Right.
And that took me a while to find the right combination. Todd and I have both been fortunate enough to work with some of the best musicians in the world. That are Todd's had on his records in Nashville, the same ones that I've had that have been on Elton John's records, on John Cougar's records. But it took a while to find the right combination of musicians that made a sound that was individual to me sonically. And so that was what, literally, I didn't go knocking on doors. They came to me. And that's one of the things I tell anybody who asks me for advice is to be you, because that's what worked for me.
Right.
And so I learned that, on that riverbank.
Right. Well, and Annie said the same thing, is the people who are almost, the people who go down and look around and look at what everybody else is doing and are succeeding, they probably won't succeed themselves, because what works for those people
Right.
probably won't work for yourself. And I've actually developed that. I know where you're coming from, even though, because we do share one thing. I think we're both writers, because you
Yes.
write songs, and you do have to develop your own voice. I have, you have, and you have, but so what works for me wouldn't work for you, and wouldn't work for you, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
So how do you write your songs, Todd?
Well, who knows?
Well, I want to interject here
Yeah.
before you answer that.
Yeah, sure.
This is why I'm such a fan of Todd's, because Todd is one of these people that is a standout among that crowd in Nashville, where he is. To me, there are singers and there are artists,
Right.
and everyone knows the difference. There's the Charlies, there's the Merles and the Johnnies, and there's the Steve Earles. And then there's those people on the radio, and Todd and I are lucky enough that we know some of these people that are on the airwaves that everyone hears. We know them personally. And it takes me half of their song to figure out which one of them is singing it.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts. But Todd is one of those people that I consider an artist. I fit somewhere in between. I wished I was more on Todd's side, but I am where I am, and I have to live with that. But Todd is. I'm drawn to that. He is definitely under that Steve Earle, Johnny. He is definitely an artist. So anyway, I didn't mean to
Right.
cut you off your answer, but
And a lot of people don't realize what Todd has done and who he performs with and everything, because we've talked about this. we actually joke about our shortcomings is promote, because there's a difference of promoting yourself and bragging, but it's a fine line that we all need to do. You probably understand,
Well, we hire someone to do that for us,
right?
And Todd
I would love
Todd
to
does
do
too
that.
when he's Todd does too when he's at a certain, when he's ready,
Yeah.
and so.
Yeah, once I have something to promote, I do.
And the thing of it is, for me, is that I'm very uncomfortable with Todd and I have both been fortunate that we have had a level of success that we can be proud of. And so for me, I found a certain level of it very uncomfortable. And so my privacy is something that I started reading things that they were writing about me in the press, and things that caught me off guard. I found myself being described as hermetic, as reclusive, and I never really thought about that until I started reading it, and I realized that I couldn't deny that, and so. And so that's just, again, a part of what that river molded, and a part of something I had to accept. So I was very fortunate through people in my life. We had a great team of people, and so I feel like I've done what I wanted to achieve, really, and I don't, I've got the T-shirt, and for me, part of that wasn't comfortable, and so. I love being creative.
Right.
I love the, as Todd knows, as you know, if you're a writer, it doesn't stop. It's going to come to you.
Oh, sure.
And you better, you're going to grab that pen and you're going to put it down because, oh my God, that's a killer line. You know what I mean?
And you're also going to write a lot of stuff that it never goes any further than just jotting it down.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I wrote like 2 of those over the weekend
Did
that
you?
nobody's ever going to hear except for me.
I've been on sort of a dry spell, and finally
Yeah.
I did write the other day. But writing songs, as Todd knows, you get to connect with people on a certain level. Writing the book was very scary for me because I felt very vulnerable. Putting myself, someone who does respect their privacy, out there on the kind of level that I think this did. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, it's interesting that there's one part in the book where you talk about the difference between, you kind of came up with a moniker for yourself. There's a difference between WW and Wayne Warner.
Yeah.
And I don't think you've read that part yet. So I
You
think
understand
you should
that,
explain
don't you,
it.
as an artist?
I absolutely. Yeah, you have to. I think the folk world and the singer-songwriter world where I'm at now is quite a bit different than country,
Right.
which is probably the most popular format there is right now. Folks way down on the bottom of the list. But as soon as you walk into a venue or any sort of appearance, you're performing.
You become that persona.
Until you get in the car and you're on your way home.
Right.
You have to. You're performing the whole time.
Right.
Well, and as Nashville knows, Scott, as Todd knows, in the music business, quite frankly, the persona is sadly, in some way, more important than the music. I was so disappointed. I was really blessed, and I mean that sincerely, to be signed to Atlantic Records. Absolutely learned so much about what goes on behind that golden curtain that every artist wants to be able to witness. That few do. To be signed to a major label label. But I was absolutely stunned to find out, and I know Todd and I have talked about this. It was so frustrating. It's frustrating to both of us. I was stunned to find out, how much. Well, first of all, how much money that we spent making the album. But what really shocked me, again, coming from the riverbanks of the Missisquoi River and coming from Vermont, where we wake up in the morning and put on a flannel shirt and go. But they spent more money on how I looked on that album cover than we spent on the record. Which, for me, as an artist, who wrote those songs, who signed up because of my passion and my love for music, and as you said, growing up on stage and around, around rhythm and beats and melodies and lyrics. That's what I was excited about.
Right.
And they, but it was all about the image and that persona, and that's where WW was born, because I became two different people. You know what I mean? It was that totally persona that they created, and they spent a lot of money on creating this person that I really didn't recognize.
Right. So your book is called Backstage Nashville.
Backstage Nashville.
So basically, the book explores some of that, but I've gone through it. It starts out your humble beginnings here in Vermont and works its way through, but it looks like it also peeks in behind some of these curtains that other people might not know about unless they've walked in your shoes or his shoes.
Absolutely. But I think the book I think the North Star of the book changed, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong. To me, it gets into more of the psyche of an artist. Would you agree, Todd?
Yeah.
And just how we, and actually the three of us at this desk here, because certainly you are an artist, Scott, and just how I always say that we need our own 12-step program.
No, I understand.
Because we literally live in a place, and I describe this in the book, and I'd like you guys to tell me if you agree, where we artists, we create through paintings or through books or through music, and it's different varieties of art, places where people like to come and visit through looking at a painting or through listening to a song, or reading a book, where they like to come visit art, but to live in that place would drive them insane. And we live there. So we can take them into our world for 3 minutes via a song, or for 5 days via a book, or for a few minutes while they look at a picture. And we live in that sort of outer dimension.
Right.
That can be, I think, and history shows, when you look at the Johnny Cashes and the Merles and the Bob Dylans and the Steve Earles, what that outer world can do to us, or can be like, one of the reasons why I do belong to his 12-step program proudly. So I think I get into that a little bit, in the book, about how we artists perceive things and feel things. And I didn't really know the book was going to go there, but of course it was written, well, by an artist. So naturally, I think the pen steered itself in that direction. And it's funny because that is the element of the book that I get the most response from.
Right. And the thing is, before the show, I asked you to do something that I kind of thought you felt uncomfortable about, because I feel so uncomfortable about. I says, Wayne, will you sign my book? Even though I have 6 books behind me, and I've been on the History Channel, I've done this, and when somebody asks me for my autograph, it's like I'm happy to do it, but I'm thinking, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you want my name? I'm nobody, and I knew when I asked you, you were going to have a very similar comment.
I never got used to that. I got a chance to do. I had a hit record with a song that was my least favorite song that I ever wrote, called Turbo Twang. But I'm so grateful for the song, because it got me around the country, and it introduced me to so many great people, and so I was working with people like Billy Ray Cyrus and Lone Star, and just great artists that I got a chance to work for, and I was totally amazed after the show. Well, first of all, I was amazed that this little song that I wrote in my hometown, a few miles from here, walking around the block. I would be singing it on stage and have 30,000 people singing that thing back to me. As much as I hated the song, I always loved that aspect of it.
Well, and your grandfather's in the song. Isn't
Yes,
he?
he is.
I
Yeah,
remember when you did that.
And so, but Scott, you're right. It always blew my mind after the show to see lines for as far as you could see waiting for my autograph, and I could never understand why. And sure, I was grateful to do it, but I always thought, what's wrong with these people?
In your mind,
Sure.
you're just this little guy from
Yeah.
a town of a few hundred people.
I talked in the book about the first time a woman fainted when she came up and touched me, and I remember on the bus the band had so much fun with that. Well, they said it was heat stroke. It was hot that day.
was hot.
Maybe it was.
I've certainly never experienced that.
Well, you will.
Oh, I bet you.
Yeah.
I bet you Danielle, when
You
you go
will.
home, she faints every
Sometimes.
time she sees you.
You know what
happened.
I do a lot of times? I tell the audience that I'm selling CDs after the show, and they make great coasters
Yeah.
nowadays because nobody listens to CDs. But I do tell them that it sounds better if I sign it.
Well, I want the viewers to know that I've had a chance to scope out a little bit about your album currently in the works, and you and I are both actually working on a new album.
Yeah. I came to your house and sang you the entire album with,
my gosh,
with
I'm
my
telling
acoustic
you.
guitar because I hadn't recorded any of it.
Again, you talk about art. It's an amazing thing, and I can't wait for it to get out. And
I'm excited.
it's going to be huge. And I'm working on a new album, and it's of course Todd will tell you. You as a writer, always our newest project is our best. And
Right.
But I am excited about this project. It's taken on a different direction than anything I've ever done. I think Todd's heard a couple of tracks,
I've heard of
it?
about three of them.
and so
You go to Wayne's house and you sit in his studio, and he'll play you the tracks that he's working on
Right.
at a volume that is similar to being in Madison Square Garden.
well, that's what
The sound's the best
the
that
way
way,
it's meant to be.
but I'm always prepared for it. I'm like, okay, this is going to be loud.
I have a musical talent too. I can sing that will make anybody cry, no matter what song I sing. I mean, I have no musical talent.
I've had nights like that. Definitely.
Hey, so I think what we should do is we should take a break here, and then we'll continue this in part two. We're doing a two-part series.
Two-part series because
with
one of
Wayne
your other
Warner.
gue's canceled, and I'm the B plan.
No, that's
We
not what
talked
it
about
is.
this.
I've been
out a
trying to
couple
get
of-
you on Scott's show for
So
months
to the
now.
viewers out there,
James Taylor was going to come on,
yeah, well,
but
the weather is the weather.
Yeah, the weather.
Yeah,
I
well,
found
that's
I found out a couple of things today to the viewers out there. This is the only show where that they actually pretty much told me that I'm the B plan. I don't know what camera we're in.
straight ahead, straight ahead.
And I have been
Camera B.
all over the country several times. And this is literally the first time that I've ever been in a studio where we talked about slurry.
Slurry, yeah, slurry. That's true. I bet you some of the people around the country where you've been on, they say, "What's slurry?"
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and now you know why there is slurry
Well,
too.
yeah, and I'm glad that Scott filled me in on that. So the next time I go, the next time I'm in Georgia, I'm going to ask him, how the slurry is around there.
I bet you that's going to make its way into a song.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
for
well-
one of you guys, you're going to
Well, I guess we'll get together and write that.
All right. All right, so we'll be back next week with part two.
Be.